good to have you here. My name is Hunter Cheney. I'm one of the directors here, director of Chief Bottle Washer, I guess is what we call it. World War II was the worst conflict in human history since we've been on this little small blue marble of ours spinning in the blackness of space. It wasn't that long ago. Talking just 80 plus years away. We have to remember this history. If we're to survive future generations, we have to remember what transpired during World War II. My late father-in-law, Armin Cassadon, was a Marine all the way through the Pacific Theater, all the way through all the major battles, all the way up to the end, survived the whole thing. But he really didn't talk a whole lot about his experiences during World War II. When we hear people like Jonathan recount the experiences that his father had during World War II, this brings us closer to understanding what it must have been like as a young man at the age of somewhere between 18 and 22, I'm guessing. In this case, out in the sands of North Africa and all through Europe, all their soldiers in the Pacific, to hear these personal experiences brings us closer to understanding what these young men went through, to try and hold on to those memories so when we think about war, we remember the sacrifices that these young men made for us all around the world to preserve our freedoms that we enjoy now. And that's why it's such a treat for me personally to introduce to you Mr. Jonathan Gray.
Thank you all for coming. I knew we'd have at least two. Some folks over there reserved their chairs a little earlier on, but it looks like we ended up with more than two. So thank you for coming. So Hunter there, he is the man that keeps this entire place ticking. There's no event or decision that does not bear his imprimatur. So thank you, Hunter, for inviting me. Now he does have one flaw. He keeps calling me Jonathan, which is actually my son's name. My name is Richard. Over here is my grandson Hayden, and he's wearing his great-granddad's uniform from World War I, actually. Beckett, my other grandson, over here in the green, and my dear daughter-in-law, Tara. And back in the back of the camera, that's my granddaughter, Raphael. So we're making a family affair. You'll hear that I was a chaplain in prison camp. When you're a prisoner of war, you do a lot of praying. So I'd like to do that now, if you guys would join me. Lord, we thank you for the beautiful day. We thank you for this amazing place, and Hunter and people like him. And I thank you for everyone that's come here. And I just pray that you would give me words to say, that it might be informative and or entertaining or something, at least to make it worth our time. All these things we pray in your name. Amen. Right, so this is me, Richard Gray. Go ahead. I'm not going to go too far back in history. You'll see that I was kind of an accidental soldier. I joined the National Guard band in my little town at age 15 to play the clarinet, not knowing that except for our Marine brothers 3 weeks before us, we would be the first ground troops in the war. We were the first in Western Theater, the first to face the German Army, the first Army troops. I just wanted to play the clarinet. But there was some military history in my family. This is my great-grandfather, Eli. On the other side is his brother Jonathan, enlisted the same day in the Civil War, de-enlisted the same day. Everything they did extremely close. Fast forward one generation, this is my granddad, W.C. Gray. He was, you see the Bible? He was what my mom used to call a hillbilly preacher. This was in the Ozarks. He was an itinerant. He's circuit preacher, tent meetings, revivals, stuff like that. We did find out last year, actually, that he also had a pulpit at a small church in Gwinnett, Missouri, which is where I was born. This is Daisy here. You notice he does not have a mustache, but not too long after this photo, Daisy gave him a kick in the face. And ever since then, he had a very large mustache and no great love for Daisy. So this is my dad here. This is Walter and his brothers. He was the oldest. He was kind of the leader. Sadly, I lost him young as you were here. That's my mom on the left. That's Celia. My grandson on the other side, I call her Cece. This is me, the very good-looking infant there. My sister Helen. So, it was a depression, it was the Dust Bowl, we lived in Missouri, we got to experience all of that wonder. We were on the verge of starvation, like everybody was. Heard about California, like everybody did. It was a land of opportunity. And as it happened, my uncles, the ones you just saw, they'd already moved out to California. So they kind of trod a path that we could follow, and we decided to move out. And as you can see, we were pretty excited about it. I know I was. At 12, something like that. Been in the little town of Gwinnett, Missouri all my life, so this was like the greatest adventure. So we moved to a place called Eagle Rock, California. If any of you know it today, it doesn't look much like this. Apparently, there's $5 million condos. That's the starting price, I think. And there's not a square inch of land. It was a sad place for me. We had only been there a few months. As you can see, there's intersection just here. That little spur went down to our house. I was down there with my dad, and he started having a lot of distress. Didn't know what it was, had no idea. Again, I think I'm maybe 13, just turned by this time. All I knew was he needed help. So I ran down to this road, took a left turn there to get the doctor. I ran hell for leather down that road. And as you can see, there's not much in the way of landmarks. I went the wrong direction. The doctor was this way. So I ran back as fast as I could, but it was too late. I just dropped over dead of a heart attack. So there we were. We had no friends. We had a little bit of family. We had been there 3 or 4 months. My mom, my sister, and me. That was it. And depression. So basically, we were ready for destitution. Save for one aunt whose name I will forever bless. She lived back in Iowa, and her husband Frank worked at Swift Premium, which a lot of you might know. Younger folks might not recognize the name, but I think half the bacon you can buy in any store in America today comes from Swiss Premium. That wouldn't quite remember. It was a good job. And in depression, those 3 words, a good job with everything. They had a spare room, they invited us out. So we got back in that same car and drove right back, almost exactly where we had come from. A little town called Council Bluffs, Iowa. As I mentioned, sorry at my age, drink a lot of water, stay hydrated. I could play the clarinet. I was no good at piano. I'm getting clues from my tech support back in the back. Oh, can't hear me? All right, I'll try to speak up a little bit. I think we're almost maxed out over here. So, she was a piano teacher. She taught me, as my daughter-in-law taught taught my grandkids. After 2 years, she said, Dick, you have so much talent. I don't think it's in piano, though. Why don't you try the clarinet? So I did. For whatever reason, I took to it immediately. Loved the clarinet, and that's me just here. You'll notice there were metal clarinets back then. They were durable, good for soldiers. So this is Camp Ripley, where our little National Guard regiment, the 168th and the 133rd, 135th, both from Minnesota, got together, and we had a couple weeks of Army training, which consisted of target practice, close order drill, which is marching in very prescribed ways, and reading of manuals. That was it, for 2 weeks a year. Not the kind of training you need when you're going to face General Erwin Rommel, as we found out later. The other reason, obviously I needed money. I was a termite treater, which didn't make much, about 50 cents a week. National Guard made $1 a week. And back then, $1 was a big deal. But there was this clarinet I had my eye on in Omaha, just across the river. Absolutely gorgeous instrument. And this gentleman who owned the music store, he sold it to me for $40 down. I don't know why he trusted me at that age, but maybe the uniform, who knows. So I got my clarinet. We didn't know that we were going to be called up. FDR and General George Marshall, who was the Chief of Staff of the Army, had been doing a lot of planning with Winston Churchill, who had clearly been in the war a very long time by this point. This was early 41. And they had been in it since September 1st, 1939. They had big plans for America. I don't know, for some reason our National Guard division was the only one that they could get ready. It's bizarre that all these Iowa farm boys ended up facing the German army. The first thing they sent us to Camp Claiborne in Louisiana. They had something called the Louisiana Maneuvers, the biggest military maneuvers in history, actually, even to this day. It featured some unknown officers. There was a young Lieutenant Colonel named Eisenhower and a young Brigadier General named Patton. So he outran Eisenhower. We were supposed to only be down there for a few months. All the moms were told we'd be home by Christmas. We did not see our moms or touch U.S. soil for almost 4.5 years as teenagers. We could never have foreseen what lay ahead of us. That's me in the middle, obviously. And to my friends, there on your left there, that's Dale Thompson, my best friend, went to high school with me, played clarinet with me. I could never beat him on auditions clarinet. He was always first chair, as you'll see in some pictures. I was always second chair. That's Eric Waggy on the right. We called him Wags. So more training, right? State-of-the-art weaponry, right? No. You see that? M1903 Springfield bolt action rifle, made for the First World War. You see the little tin helmet? Designed by a guy named Higgins. You might have seen his armory in Worcester at some point. Perfect for World War I, not World War II. Another picture, well, you can almost see the puttees we wore, even our footwear, everything went back. One of the machine gunners that my son Jonathan met, we had so little equipment that his training machine gun was a wooden tripod and a broomstick. And that's how they trained him on a machine gun. That's the kind of training we got. No, it was about this much of what we needed, and what we needed was the size of this museum. Whoever has heard, my grandkids have heard this a million times, but the most important thing in any battle or any war Any guesses? What's that? Logistics. Very important. In the Navy, they always talk about beans, bullets, and bunker fuel, right? So in terms of logistics, those are the three things you need to live on. But nothing is worth a grain of salt without morale. If you're convinced you're going to lose, it doesn't matter if you have the best weapons. It wouldn't matter if we had state-of-the-art weapons. So bands help bring morale. Now back in the day, and even then, they were used to keep the soldiers in step, but that was kind of a small part of the duty. This is the USO, some of you guys might know of it, Club for Servicemen. And we played, that's me back there on the B-flat tenor sax. Good thing about woodwinds is the fingerings for a clarinet work for the saxophone, so you see me playing a lot of different winds. And then it happened. A few of us, I usually gathered 3 guys. There wasn't much to do at Camp Claiborne on Sundays. We all love to sing. I really love to sing hymns, probably from my granddad's church. So we would go to neighborhood churches on a Sunday. There are usually 10 or 12 people there, so adding 4 was a big increase for them, and we'd sing hymns as a quartet. This day, we came back to Camp Claiborne, and something was off. The first thing we realized, things happen and it kind of happens in slow motion, and your brain is not quite ready to catch up. There was a guard at the gate. Why is there a guard at the gate? We could see he had the new M1 Garand, the weapon that won the war. Magnificent beast that it was, and we still had our Springfields. We also noticed he was not in the mood for joking, which we didn't notice till too late. He was not happy. He looked at us, and then finally, a penny dropped. And he said, "You guys don't know, do you?" What? He said, "We were just bombed. We just lost 1,000 servicemen." They had no idea at that point how many we lost. Obviously, it was much more than that. He didn't know that he had lost 2 brothers. He didn't know that at the time. He asked for IDs. We didn't have any IDs. Why would we have IDs? There's never a guard, right? It's one of those, you hear white noise, right? Things are getting a little bit blurry. You still can't figure out what's going on. It was Pearl Harbor. And again, we're the first ones. So this is my diary. I actually gave these to my son. That's the first page, January 12th. Just about a month after Pearl Harbor, we were already on a train. And if any of you knows anything about logistics, getting an entire division on a train in a month, that's doing some going with no planning whatsoever, no warning, nothing. Excuse me. It's hard to imagine just how small, how backwards our army was then. Anybody want to guess in the world ranking, like where we came? Were we number 1, like we are today? 18. Wow. I wish I had another coin to give you. We were number 18. After, anybody want to guess what was number 17? If you get this one, I'll be really impressed. Number 17, Albania. We had a smaller army in Albania by a long shot. This is one of the many things. We're starting not from 0, but about from -10. The German army's at 100. We're on the train. After we went to Fort Dix, a little more training, not much. We shipped out of Brooklyn, put it on the Duchess of Athol. A ship that had, like most ships, so many bugs in the oatmeal that they'd actually turn out the lights at this time. And as we saw in the video last night, the guys who had really delicate constitutions would stay up top, run down and get their bowl, and run straight back up, for the vomiting to begin. You know, the Atlantic is a rough place. It's even rougher when, for the first time, you start to figure out this is war. Somebody could get killed here. So that's us in a convoy. There was a sub, a German U-boat. Destroyers were chasing with depth charges. And you can see how close we were to that. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Like, what did we get involved in here? I just wanted to play the clarinet. They took us to Northern Ireland. This is us marching after a lecture. The training there was still pretty bad. You know, we did guard duty, garrison duty. We went to lectures. We did a bit more training. Does that look intense to you? Look at the expression on the corporal there. Doesn't seem like you should be smoking a pipe. Good shot, son. I'll bet you could get 2 or 3 more in, you know, before the day is done. Still, World War I, World War I, World War I. We were about to ship out for Operation Torch in North Africa. This is what we were still had to work with. Again, morale, especially when we were so far behind. We didn't even know how far behind we were. But we would do some, we had a very good swing band. Swing bands were big back then. Let's see. Oh, here I am. You can just see the top of my head playing a baritone sax. Right? All fingerings the same. A lot of fun to do that. We got to see the Queen. More intense training. I heard about this odd man named General Patton again, who will come back into our story. What he did in the Louisiana maneuvers, they had a big battle, right? Red versus blue. He was told he was going to be on the losing side. You can imagine how George Patton took that. They were all supposed to stay in their little places in Louisiana, not George Patton. He took his tanks into Texas, went straight north, got gas from gas stations. Wouldn't you love to see the expression of the 14-year-old pumping gas when Patton and his armored regiment pulls in and says, fill her up. Outflanked the entire enemy army and won the battle. His superiors were not happy, and he couldn't care less. So then we went to Scotland, more intense training. Actually, this is probably the most practical thing we did there. You know, bands have to be able to play. This is me. Of course, the first clarinetist is Dale Thompson. Could never beat him. You can just barely see my nose in the second chair there. And down here, a mascot. Why are mascots important in the military? Morale, right? It's something, well, not human, actually, but it's something that makes you feel more human, right? Something you can pet, something you can hug. I learned from my grandson back up here that there's a naval vessel that has a seal as a mascot. Yes, a Navy SEAL. Donkeys, you can't imagine, it was his joke, I got him credit. The kinds of animals that people have for mascots, whatever followed them along or whatever they found in the ditch or whatever. That's our top pick, by the way. Mr. Leahy, do not get on his bad side. But he was a fine conductor, and we were actually a pretty good band. So, Operation Torch. Anybody familiar with Operation Torch? Granddaddy of D-Day? Biggest amphibious invasion in history to that point. Speaking of Patton, they attacked the beach from America. They went across the ocean and straight onto the beach. They were in Morocco, we were in Algeria. These are the 1st Infantry boys who were next to us. So 1st Infantry and the 34th Division, which is the Red Bull. That's the 34th there. You heard some about tanks today. We had to, I don't think it was contradictory. It was a slightly different experience for us. We knew that this is what we had, 37 millimeter gun. Do you know what they called that? The squirrel rifle. If we were sitting behind even a Panzer III at point blank range, it would bounce off their armor. Do you know how far they could get us from? Over a mile. That's not even Tigers. Those are Panzers. You know, this is something that looks like, you know, the bulldozer got lost in the furniture factory. And then we have this, also a M3, General Lee, this one. The good news was it did have a bigger main gun. Bad news was no turret. So if you needed to fire in a different direction, you kind of had to do the parking lot 3-point turn, asking him nicely to wait, you know, until you got into position. And as backup, you had the squirrel rifle on top. Can you see the height of that thing? They called it the cathedral because it was so tall. Are tanks meant to be tall? They are not. You're not supposed to be able to see them over the brow of the hill. Now, we actually did have Shermans at that point, but FDR, Churchill had just lost 90,000 at Tobruk. He was with FDR at the time. Churchill broke down in tears. I think he had that planned because FDR said, anything you need. He said, it's funny you say that. He pulled out a list. We'd like the Sherman tanks that are just now, today, coming off the assembly line, you know, in Ypsilanti, Michigan. We would like the howitzers, you know, just now, you know. He had all this information. There's your list. So all the Shermans went to Monty in the other side of Africa. So what do the Germans have? Who knows what this is?
A Tiger 1.
Tiger 1, exactly right. You see the size of their main armature? That's the 88. The much feared 88. And it wasn't just the size of the barrel. They were high velocity. You cannot imagine what it's like to have an 88 shell go by you. You see a green fireball, afterwards you hear something, you see the fireball go, and then there's a 50-foot crater, about 30 feet deep. That's what an 88 can do. And they had them on their tanks. Oh my gosh. But we had the squirrel rifle, so we were in good shape. The general of our corps, a guy named Friedendahl, both a lunatic and an idiot, never actually entered the country we were in, which was Tunisia. Why? Because he was back in Algeria having the engineers dig out of a mountain a safe redoubt for him. Because obviously, war never moved. He was going to be in the same place for at least 6 months, right? You think he had studied Blitzkrieg? So his great idea was, okay, we have these Iowa Fire Boys. We only have 2 battalions because we don't have enough trucks to bring the 3rd down. Let's put them on top of these mountains. 2 of them that can mutually support each other. So, can you see the other mountain there in the background? 10 miles away. From here, that's Ashland. Can you locate where the Germans are and hit them with your M1903 Springfield right then? It's absurd. But that's what Friedendahl was. Ike himself came out morning before the battle, 3 in the morning, and said, what in the world's going on here? We're like, have you met Friedendahl? He had not. After the disaster, he was cashiered, and George Patton comes back into our story. We are on this mountain called Kasira. My son and my family, they actually went to this mountain, had a little ceremony. We saw, for example, can you imagine trying to dig a foxhole in that? That's about the consistency of concrete. Maybe hard